What happens when love and duty collide in the most impossible of ways? Can a prince follow his heart, or will his kingdom tear him apart? As their fingers brush for the first time, a forbidden spark ignites. But with the crown on his head, his future isn't his to decide. Should he choose the woman who makes his heart race, or the royal responsibilities that bind him? Stay with us, because this love story is about to take a heartbreaking turn. In a kingdom where tradition reigns and duty come before all else, Prince Alexander is burdened by the weight of his crown. Raised to lead with unwavering control, he's never allowed himself the luxury of love. But when he meets Lily, a commoner with a fierce spirit and a heart that sees past his royal facade, everything changes. For Lily, this connection feels like a dream, a spark she never thought she'd experience with someone so far above her station. She's been taught to know her place, but with Alexander, she feels something more, something deep, real, and unspoken. But their love isn't without its struggles. Alexander's engagement to a noble woman, carefully arranged by his parents, hangs over him like a shadow, and the kingdom's expectations are suffocating. Meanwhile, Lily has fought her own battles in silence, unsure if love could truly be for someone like her. Now, as their paths intertwine, they face a choice no one can make for them. Can Alexander, the future king, choose his heart over his duty? Can Lily, who has always believed in love from afar, trust that someone like her could belong in a world so different from her own? This is not just a story of two people who find each other against all odds. It's a story of breaking free from chains, facing the impossible, and deciding whether love is worth the ultimate sacrifice. It all began 5 years ago, on a warm spring evening when the royal garden bloomed with life, a place where the world outside seemed distant and irrelevant. Prince Alexander was young, carefree in a way that didn't match the future that awaited him. He had just returned from his studies abroad, and his world, while filled with expectation, was still untainted by the cold responsibilities of royalty. Lily, a servant in the royal household, had always kept her distance. She had grown up in the shadows of the palace, a quiet observer to the opulence of the world she could never touch. But something in Alexander's eyes, something unguarded in his laughter, made her lower her walls that day. Their first meeting was by chance, or perhaps fate. Lily had been tasked with bringing tea to the prince as he sat alone beneath the cherry blossoms. At first, he barely looked up, his mind lost in thought. But when their gazes met, it was like the world shifted. The air between them was thick with something unspoken, a shared moment of understanding that neither of them could explain. She set the tea down, avoiding his gaze, but he reached out and gently took her hand. The connection was instant. No words were needed. His touch felt familiar, like something she had always been waiting for, and she, for him, was the only person who had ever made him feel seen. Not for his title, but for who he truly was. Over the next few weeks, their stolen moments became more frequent. In secret corners of the palace, their hands would brush, eyes meeting with a fire neither dared to fan. A stolen kiss in the garden, a promise whispered beneath the moonlight. They laughed together, shared their hopes and dreams, and for the first time, Alexander felt free. But then came the moment that changed everything. One evening, as they sat together in the library, Alexander's father, the king, had sent for him. It was time to make an announcement. A noblewoman, already chosen, would be his future wife, a union to strengthen the kingdom's alliances. The weight of duty slammed into him. His mind raced, heart torn between love and responsibility. The next day he left, leaving behind only a letter, too afraid to face her, to tell her the truth. He couldn't bear to be the man who let down the kingdom, and yet, in walking away, he shattered the only thing that had ever truly mattered. Lily never understood what had happened. One moment they were planning their future together. The next, he was gone. She didn't know how to move on, and yet she did. Time passed, and the wound never fully healed, but life continued until one day, when fate once again brought them back together. The moment Alexander saw her again, standing in the royal square, his heart ached with the weight of what he had lost. Their eyes met. He could see the years of hurt in her gaze. But despite the pain, there was still something there, lingering between them. He couldn't forget the touch of her hand, the sound of her laughter, the way she had made him feel alive. But now, the stakes were higher. There was no turning back. This time, there was more at risk than just their hearts. Now, standing across from Lily in the grand ballroom, Alexander's heart is torn between what his eyes want and what his duty demands. The years of silence have not erased the fire that burns between them, but it has transformed into something heavier, more complicated. As he watches her, his thoughts flood with memories of their time together, her laughter, the warmth of her hand in his. But that was before he was crowned the heir to the throne, before his kingdom needed him. He wasn't just any man anymore. He was Prince Alexander, the future king, bound by bloodlines, alliances, and an unyielding sense of responsibility. The weight of his crown presses down on him, and the duty to his kingdom, his people, looms larger than the love he once had. He knows what is expected of him: to marry a woman of noble blood, to strengthen the kingdom, and to secure the legacy of the royal family. But standing here, in the same room as Lily, he feels as though he is suffocating. Can I even make a choice anymore? His mind whispers as he tries to focus on the events around him, but his eyes keep returning to her. She stands across the room, her presence as striking as ever. The years have not dimmed her beauty, but her gaze is guarded now, no longer the open warmth he once knew. He wonders if she still sees him the way she used to, or if time has turned the love between them into something unrecognizable. Lily, for her part, is no stranger to the struggles of the heart. She has built walls around herself, convinced that the prince she once loved is gone forever. When he left, she let go of the dream of them being together. But seeing him again, so close, those walls she carefully constructed begin to crack. She can't help but notice the tension in his eyes, the sadness lingering beneath his royal composure. The man she once knew is still there, but he's trapped behind a duty he can't escape. How did we get here? Her thoughts race as she forces herself to look away, trying to concentrate on the words of the conversation around her. She has tried to move on, but every step away from him feels like she's losing part of herself. The truth is, she's always known the risks of loving someone like Alexander. He's not hers to keep, and she's never belonged in his world. But now, faced with the truth of their impossible circumstances, the old wounds start to bleed again. She can still feel the softness of his touch, the way his lips had once whispered promises of forever. But now, he's bound by the weight of the kingdom's expectations, and she's just a woman, a commoner, with no place in his royal world. As Alexander watches her, his heart is a battlefield. If I choose her, what happens to my kingdom, to my family? What will become of my legacy? His mind echoes with the expectations of those around him. The advisors, the nobles, his parents, all of them would never forgive him for defying the future of the kingdom, for a love that could never be. His heart yearns for her, but the thought of breaking the promises made to his people fills him with dread. Lily, too, faces a crossroads. She knows she can never be the woman Alexander needs. She's seen the way the world watches him, the way his every move is scrutinized. He can't be with someone like her. His family would never allow it, and the pressure from society would be unbearable. If he chose her, it would destroy him, and she could never be the cause of that. It's better to walk away, she thinks, before I fall too deep, before I lose myself in a dream that can never come true. But in the silence between them, something stirs, something unspoken, a deep, aching longing that neither of them can ignore. The past, their love, and the impossible choice ahead all hang in the air like a storm waiting to break. The storm outside mirrors the turmoil inside. Rain lashes against the palace windows as Alexander stands in the royal garden, his heart racing. He watches Lily, her figure illuminated by the soft glow of the lanterns, but the distance between them feels insurmountable. It has always been this way, duty pulling him one way, love dragging him the other. But tonight, he has to choose. Lily steps forward, her footsteps soft but purposeful. Her heart aches with each step. But she knows the truth. This is the moment where everything either shatters or mends, and she cannot keep pretending anymore. Her voice cracks as she calls his name. Alexander. He turns sharply, his expression unreadable. There's so much he wants to say, so much he wishes he could do. But the weight of his crown is too much, and the responsibility to his people, to his family, bears down on him. Lily. His voice is raw, strained. I never wanted to hurt you. Then why did you leave? Her words sting, and she's not sure if she wants an answer or if she just wants to hear the truth, finally. He steps closer, but the distance between them still feels like a chasm. You know why, he says, his voice thick with emotion. I never wanted this, but I can't choose you. I can't walk away from everything I've been taught to be. Lily's heart shatters at his words. She stands frozen, every inch of her wanting to run, wanting to scream, wanting to tell him that love should never be a sacrifice. But instead, she just nods, tears blurring her vision. Then say it, she whispers, her voice barely audible, trembling. Say that you never loved me. Tell me that all of this was just a moment, nothing more, and I will walk away. I'll leave you, and I won't look back. Her words hang in the air, a challenge, a plea. He stares at her, his eyes filled with a depth of pain he cannot hide. He opens his mouth, but no words come out. His hands tremble at his sides, the choice suffocating him. He could tell her the lie she wants to hear. He could say it was never real. But in his heart, he knows it's not true. Instead, he steps forward, his hand reaching out to her, the final walls between them crumbling. He can't lie. Not to her, not to himself. I can't, he breathes. I can't lie to you, Lily. I've always loved you. I never stopped loving you. The words pierce the silence like a thunderclap, the tension in the air now palpable, thick with everything they've both buried over the years. Her breath catches, the weight of his confession crashing into her like a wave. Her heart longs for him, but her mind knows the reality. I can't be the man you need me to be. He continues, his voice breaking. I can't have both. I can't have you and my kingdom. Her hand trembles as she reaches out, touching his face for the first time in years. The warmth of his skin, the feel of him so close. It's almost too much to bear. I know, she whispers, tears falling freely now. I know. But you're not just a prince, Alexander. You're the man I loved. And maybe that man deserves more than a life of obligation. For a moment, everything is still. The rain continues to fall, soft and relentless. But all that matters is this moment between them. The truth they've finally spoken, the love they've finally confessed. But the choice remains. The crown, the kingdom, the future. Do you love me enough to walk away from it all? She asks, her voice barely a whisper, filled with raw emotion. His gaze locks with hers, the weight of his decision pressing down on him like never before. He takes a deep breath, as though gathering the courage to say the words that will change everything. I don't know if I'm strong enough, he admits, his voice barely audible. And just like that, everything hangs in the balance. The silence between them stretches on, heavy and filled with unspoken words. The storm outside rages on, but inside, the world feels suspended in time. Alexander stands frozen, his heart a battlefield between duty and love, between the kingdom he's promised to serve and the woman who has always held his heart. Lily looks at him, her eyes filled with a quiet sadness, knowing that the answer to their future lies in the choice he makes. Alexander. Her voice is barely above a whisper, her hand still resting against his cheek. I can't be the reason you lose everything. I love you too much for that. His chest tightens at her words, and for a moment he considers walking away. He could go back to his life, follow the path his family has laid out for him, and forget this aching hole in his heart. But then he looks into her eyes, and he knows he can't. Not anymore. I can't lose you again. he says, his voice raw with emotion. He steps closer, the gap between them vanishing as his hand gently takes hers. I can't choose a kingdom over the woman I love. I've spent years running from this, but I can't anymore. Lily looks up at him, her eyes clouded with doubt. And what happens now? What do we do? You can't just throw away everything for me, for us. The weight of their future presses down on them both. But in that moment, Alexander realizes something. Love isn't about making grand, heroic gestures or sacrificing everything. It's about choosing the person who makes you feel whole, who makes you believe that anything is possible, even in the face of impossible odds. And Lily has always been that for him. I don't know what's next, he admits, his voice trembling, but I know that I won't let you go. Not again. Lily swallows the lump in her throat, a tear slipping down her cheek. And what about the kingdom? What about your people? He reaches for her, gently wiping the tear from her face. The kingdom will survive. It's not the crown that makes a king, Lily. It's the heart, and my heart belongs with you. A long pause hangs between them, but it's a pause filled with understanding. She sees the resolve in his eyes, the man he's become, a man who is no longer defined by his title, but by his choices. She sees the future they could build, even if it's uncertain and filled with challenges. I never thought I could have this, she says quietly, but maybe it's not too late. With a trembling sigh, Alexander pulls her into his arms, his heart beating in time with hers. They stand there in the garden, under the stormy sky, knowing that their journey ahead will not be easy. There will be consequences to their decision, and they will face the judgment of those who expect more from them than just love. But in this moment, nothing else matters. I'll fight for you, he promises, his voice firm with determination, for us. And Lily, with all the love and faith she has left, nods. I'll fight too. As they stand together, a new chapter begins. It's not a perfect ending, not yet, but it's an ending full of possibility. With the storm still raging outside, they know that whatever happens, they will face it together, side by side, ready to redefine their future on their own terms. And as the rain begins to subside, a faint glimmer of light breaks through the clouds, the first sign of a new dawn. Can love truly conquer all? Can two hearts find their way back, even when the world tries to pull them apart? Sometimes the hardest battles we face are not against others, but within ourselves. It's easy to let fear, duty, or pride dictate our choices. But what if love is worth the risk? What would you do if fate gave you a second chance? Would you fight for it or walk away? Reflect on your own journey and ask yourself, if love knocked at your door one last time, would you open it?